We're at the Oklahoma City Zoo, and joining me is horticulture curator Pearl Pearson. Well, Pearl, a lot of people are familiar with the zoo, but not everybody knows that it's also a botanic garden as well.
Yes, well, it certainly is a botanical garden. We have quite a plant collection out here, along with a wonderful animal collection, and some very interesting gardens, some very specific type of plant material, and some is just large garden spaces to provide more of a park-like atmosphere and to kind of build little garden rooms ourselves.
Well, you've certainly created a very nice park-like setting here, and of course the plants also benefit the animals as well.
That's right. A lot of our different exhibit areas do coincide with animal exhibits, and some examples would be at our cat forest. We have an area where we have lions, and we also want to kind of get the setting right for the visitor too. So we have copies, and it's a savanna-like setting for them. And also, I guess in the cat forest area we have jaguars, and we have plantings that are actual representatives of the southwestern part of the United States, so that kind of matches their habitat too. And a lot of the different exhibits we do that. Great Escape, we have great apes, and we try to represent plant material that's more tropical-like in appearance. And we also have orangutans that are Asian, so we have plant material that's more Asian in appearance. Same like with our Siberian tigers, which is Asian also. So a lot of bamboo used in those areas.
Yes, create the right habitat, the right environment.
Yeah.
And as a botanic garden, of course, you also have gardens just for their own beauty and some nice collections.
Lots of gardens. The whole intent is when you actually get out of your car, get out of the parking lot, and you go into the zoo, it should be a total different feeling and atmosphere, and that's what we try to create with the different rooms and the different garden types, along with what we do alongside the animal exhibits.
One of the special collections we have right here is your dwarf conifers, and maybe not everybody sees this. It's over by the Educational Center. Do you want to tell us a few highlights here?
Right. This is really a garden we've had in place for 10 years now, and it's been very successful considering its location. It's full sun, well exposed to the west, so you get the winds and the hot afternoon suns. But we have some beautiful pines and conifers that have just done fantastically here. And I think a lot of that definitely has to do with it's a raised garden bed. And then just the success that we've seen of these plants over the years is just outstanding. Just a wonderful array of different types of greens for conifers and junipers and fuchsias. And it's very interesting, and it's a good spot next to the education building because we can utilize a lot of it to talk about dwarf forms of plants and witches' brooms, which is pretty fascinating if you don't know about it, and certainly has a good educational story behind it, so we like that too.
Absolutely. You really do have some wonderful specimens in this bed here. Would you like us to tell us about some of these?
Sure, I'll show you a couple of these. They are very unusual and a little hard to find in the market, so I'll just say that front, but these are available. You just have to look for them. This is a Deodar cedar. It's prostrata. And it has a beautiful form, and of course it's just going to go horizontal. So it's always going to stay this form and just keep trailing.
Keep spreading.
Something else that's kind of unusual is we do have some witches' brooms. I'm going to show a few different types, but this one in the back is a bald cypress.
Okay.
And it was, when we purchased it, it was called a sea crest. So it was supposed to be flat-topped, kind of like the Deodar cedar is. But as with all cultivars and Mother Nature and how things grow on their own, it took upon itself to not be flat-topped anymore and has grown up to, and this is a 10-year-old bald cypress.
It still has
a beautiful form, a very beautiful tight form, and it's very pretty. Here on top of the Deodar cedar, you'll see just popping out from behind it is a ponderosa pine. It's a dwarf, and it's called Little Joe, which I think is kind of cute. If you know anything about ponderosa, and there was Haas and Little Joe, so this one's been called Little Joe. To the right of it is a mugo pine, and it's called Isley's Big Tuna. Isley's has to do with the nursery where it was developed, and it has a nice form, but it doesn't get very big, but it stays nice and tight.
Now you mentioned some witches' brooms, and we're going to take a look at that, but just to explain to our audience, a lot of trees, perhaps if they're under stress, they produce some side branching, often off of the trunk, and these witch's brooms then are propagated from cuttings off of those side branches, so they don't grow upright the way most of the trees would. They have a very different form. So what's the one that you have here?
Well, this one is a witch's broom, and this is an Austrian pine. That's Pinus nigra, and this is a cultivated form called Hornbrookiana. And the interesting thing about it is it came from Seneca Park. This is in Seneca, New York. A plant propagator found a Austrian pine there that had this witch's broom growth up in it, and took the cuttings from that and produced this cultivar, which is pretty well known in the market now. So it's kind of fascinating. I think witch's brooms are a really fascinating oddity of the plant world, and a good fit for the zoo, I think.
Absolutely, and a good educational opportunity. Well, let's go look at some of the animal environments that have been created with plants.
Okay.
Well, Pearl, you mentioned how the plants create that environment, a familiar environment for the animals. This is a wonderful example of that.
Yes, this is this is our great escape, where we have our great apes, lowland gorillas, orangutans, and chimpanzees. And this is a great example of what we call landscape immersion. And that's a term we tagged for a lot of our animal exhibits now, as we've moved into more highly landscaped areas that are a lot more beneficial to the animals. We've also tried to create a flow from where the visitor is out looking into the exhibit, and they just get the feeling that the outside just flows right into the exhibit itself, which this is a good example of that, where there is a 12 by 12 foot moat, but from this angle you can't really see it.
You don't even notice it's
That's
there,
right.
so you really do feel a part of the enclosure.
Right, and that makes it really nice. It's actually, in some sense, it's good for the animal too, because they don't have these barriers in front of them. And since we're trying to do a landscape immersion, we allow them to be at a higher elevation, which for them is really good mentally, because they're set to where they can look down at us, versus how some ways it is where the visitor is looking down at the animal. So they have a great view of us, and it feels a lot safer for them, and then we get a good feel of actually being in the exhibit with them, or them being with us, because there's no barriers. So that's pretty neat.
It is, absolutely. Another use of plants that I saw here is you have a little garden where you're growing food for your animals.
That's right. We have our own little victory garden. We call it, it's a browse garden. It's all organically grown vegetables. We also have some unusual things, such as bananas, because a lot of the animals like the banana leaves. And one thing I think is really fun is we have peppers. And you wouldn't think, but the chimpanzees in particular really love peppers. The hot ones don't seem to faze them at all.
It's interesting.
So it's really been great for us to work with the animal keepers and supply them with some fresh produce that they can share with their animals.
Certainly there's a very strong partnership there.
Yeah, and we like that.
Another thing I noticed throughout the gardens is you use a lot of native plants in your landscaping
That's
as well.
right. We like natives. Well, being from Oklahoma, certainly get to know a lot of the native plant material really well, and we utilize a lot of it out here. Basically, it's very low maintenance. We have a pretty small staff, so we do a lot of exotic plant material, but all of our exotics pretty much have to be able to make it on their own with very little care from us, because we hope once they're established that they're pretty drought tolerant. And if there's any major pest problems with them, we just have to remove them, because we do not do very much in the way of chemical applications. Basically because we're a public park, the public park setting, and because so many of these animals are really very expensive, very prized, and really well cared for, so we wouldn't want to do anything to jeopardize them.
Absolutely, and so the native plants just make the maintenance so much easier.
That's right, that's right. Plus they're a great educational tool too.
That's
it's
true.
really good for people to know what's growing in their own backyard, and
And
we like showing that.
Yeah, I noticed
Yeah.
you have a couple different habitats represented. There's a little woodland area.
Yes, we have a woodland garden that's it's plants you find more like in the Ozark region, so northeastern part of the state. And then our Oklahoma Trails exhibit kind of has regions broken down throughout the entire state. The neatest area, I think, is the Panhandle, and where we have short, little blue stems and penstemons and a lot of plants that are really more adapted to the Rocky Mountain region that do grow in our state. And they can take it really dry too, which is great. Yeah.
Certainly. Well, there's one more special garden I'd like to go take a look at.
Okay.
Well, you mentioned that you like to use tropical plants to add a little bit of color to the garden, but you also have this magnificent butterfly garden.
We do, and this is flower central. It has just got every type of color you could possibly imagine, and it's very successful at attracting butterflies. There's a lot of good educational material here that also you can read about that will talk to you about how to do your own butterfly garden and the importance of butterfly conservation. And we also use this as another site where we kind of demonstrate different plant types too and experiment with what will grow well in Oklahoma. I know you guys do that. And we do just a little bit of that. And I'd love to show you some of our, it's what is called the Sky series of coneflowers. I think it's Big Sky.
Yeah.
I think that it's really becoming very popular now, and there's just some really knockout colors here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've tried a few of these in our own garden. Last year we had the harvest and the sunrise. I remember those.
Well, these that are doing so successfully, we're probably going to be offering at a garden event later this fall. But they're great colors. There's tomato soup and mac and cheese, perfect combination
They
down
look
there.
great together.
Yes. And there's a sunrise and a sunset and a midnight, which is a dwarf, dark purple
Darker
with
color.
very dark foliage.
It's such a
And-
great group. We have everything from our pale yellows to those dark purples.
Yes, yeah.
Beautiful.
And then a great tiki torch, which is a great OSU color. It's a beautiful orange.
That's one of
Just
my
kind of
favorites.
fades into different colors, and it's beautiful. And then the whole garden, we have a lot of natives up here, and a lot of things that we just seed out. You'll see some zinnias, and we just seed that out because that's very low maintenance. And just some real unusual plant material, and it does attract a lot of very, very neat butterflies.
And a lot of birds too. I've
A
seen.
lot of birds too, that's right.
Well, of course, visitors can see the gardens anytime they come out to the zoo, but you also have a couple of special events throughout the year.
That's right. We actually have two events, one in the spring and one in the fall. So the spring one's already passed, where we really kind of focus on plant conservation and habitat conservation and talk about the importance of that, not only in regards to animal habitats, but plant habitats too, because you can't have the animals without the plants. And then in the fall, we really like to support fall gardening, because as we know, it's really the best time to do your planting of your
Absolutely.
perennials and your natives and your trees and your shrubs. And we try to offer some information to the public during that too.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing the zoo gardens with us
Well,
today.
thanks
I
for
really
coming
enjoyed
out.
it.
We really enjoyed having you.